A man getting bit by an alligator and he screams. Stood out towards me.
Ow! No, not an owl. A real scream of pain.
Hey, what up, screamers? It's a weird way to start. But hey, it's been a long festival. Really not that long, to be honest, in grand scheme of festival things. Has been 4 days of films, 17 films over the past 4 days. So it makes me feel like, uh, well, I'm worn out. And actually, seeing the Odyssey starting on Wednesday, so that makes 18 films over 5 days, which I know that reduces the average, but it's been a lot of films this past week. We've got upcoming films for The Real House coming up on Tuesday and Wednesday. Potentially the Oak Cliff Film Festival on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday again, which I probably won't see as many, but I may see some. And so, yeah, it's been a busy. It's a good problem to have. It's a good problem to have. I won't deny that. And could be worse things to do than going to see a shit ton of films. But this wraps up the Asian Film Festival of Dallas this year. The final day is in the books. We saw 4 or 5 different films. 4 of them were with the AFFD, and then one was a breakout from another. We took a break from the film festival and saw a film on our own at the Angelica. And so it's just me tonight. Brock had already left before the 5th film was done. He had to go home. Totally understandable. And yeah, so it's just driving while screaming with me. I think he might have done his own driving while screaming. But let's get into it. So I saw 5 films tonight. The first one was called 3670. It was a queer drama out of Korea about a North Korea defector who was gay, and kind of his story in trying to assimilate and be a gay man in Korea, where it's and again, I don't necessarily know. I think this is a really interesting about this festival is that there's a lot of perspective that may be difficult to ascertain just because we're not as part of that culture. So I don't know how homosexuality he was meeting up with other gay men, like trying to find gay friends in South Korea, and it seemed like it was acceptable, but they weren't able to publicly be around one another in a sense, like out in public, like if you went to clubs or like there are places you could go to congregate. Anyway, it was an interesting story about him trying to get into university and to kind of navigate the world of defecting from North Korea. He had friends whose parents were still in North Korea that they were trying to help defect. But it was mainly about this story about him trying to find his place in the gay community in South Korea. And all in all, I mean, I think it was a really, really good film. It wasn't I don't think it was one of the best ones I saw of the festival. It may have been one of the best ones I saw of the festival. It did not reach the heights of Frosted Window or Two Strangers, Two Seasons. I think it was a really well told story. It was funny and endearing. The acting was great. Was great. I don't know if like it was overly notable in any given sense, and it may resonate better with others. I really liked it, but I don't know. I don't know. I'm like I think maybe I'm just a little tired overall from films. When I watched it this morning, I really dug it. As the day goes on, it's not like I've thought about it or like in kind of in softened on it any at all. It's just I'm trying to find like like spaces to talk about these films, and I'm trying to figure out like I mean I guess I don't know. This sounds like a weird thing to say on driving while screaming. I'm like, hey, I'm trying to figure out a thing to say about this film that I just saw. I guess there was just not anything that was really like stood out to me from a gay from a drama perspective or a queer drama perspective. And I think it may resonate with others, especially you know Asian Americans or Koreans that have sit with this story and are more familiar with the process and just the kind of the culture. For me, it was a well told queer story. I don't know if it was groundbreaking in any sense outside of this is a new story from a perspective of one being a North Korean defector. That being said, and I don't think that this is the fault of this story, but like you don't really truly get a a real like what you feel is like a real glimpse of what it took for this person to defect. And I what I mean by that is like, you and I'm not necessarily saying we needed an origin story or anything like that, but like when we're making a point about North Korea, by the time we meet our main character, he's been in South Korea for like 7 years. And so it feels a little odd to not give a broader scope or like a little bit more in depth of what it takes to do what he did to get from North Korea and South Korea. Now that being said, that's coming from an American who has zero idea what it takes. Obviously, we know what immigration, we have ideas of immigration stories into our country, but from a North Korea, South Korea perspective. And so that may be well worn territory and old hat. And so again, I understand my perspective on this film and what I kind of would expect to like really truly like rip me may not be necessary from a Korean perspective. So good movie. I liked it. Was I completely smitten with it or taken with it? No, but I would recommend seeing 3670. I thought it was a good story. The second film that I saw, and maybe it was called The Diamond Directive. It was a I believe that was the title. I'm not going to look it up at the moment because I'm driving. But that's what we're going to go with. If not, I'll correct myself online, or Barack will correct me in the show notes. But The Diamond Directive was a documentary about uh, baseball in Japan and how baseball and then basically how it helped shape the Japanese and American relations really since like the mid 1800s. And basically, obviously we have our history with one another, and so how like all of it, how our history changed and how baseball kind of helped draw people back into one another. Yeah, as far as documentaries goes, yes, you guys know my take on documentaries. This is much more in line with a historical documentary that's kind of taking us through a narrative of like here are the things that happen, and then so to that end, this feels a lot like a 30 for 30 in a sense. But I mean, like, and that's not a dig on this documentary. I think the 30 for 30s are some of the best documentaries being told about sports. It was a really well told, well put together, well structured timeline and breakdown of this story that's ultimately really interesting. It talks about the first Japanese American player. The Japanese player in American baseball. It talks about the dead time where where they basically agreed, the two countries, baseball organizations agreed that Japanese players couldn't play in America, and then how that all broke down with Hideo Nomo. They talked about, one of our big stars, Cromartie, going over from the Expos to Japan and playing there at the height of his career, and how unheard of that was at the time. And then a lot of the time it was talking about like how, how the Japanese culture was so enamored with baseball, how they approach it differently, how they embraced our Negro leagues, and they would come over and they would play the all the players that couldn't play in the American League or the Major League Baseball, but because of our bigotry and our biases. And it was really, really well done. And it was put together by a female documentarian. Not that it really means necessarily anything other than that's somewhat surprising from a perspective of telling this story about a male sport. In this case, this male professional sport. I know that women play and have played professional baseball, but this perspective obviously was told about the Major League Baseballs and the Major League Baseball in Japan as well. So all in all, I thought it was really, really engaging. There wasn't like an overarching like morality of the story or anything other than just to kind of lay out the timeline, lay out the history, and give you just a really, really well put together. And like, a lot. I mean, there were a lot of talking heads, but they were all they were good. They were knowledgeable. They brought in, so it wasn't like I mean, it really wasn't anything other than trying to tell the past, almost 200 years of Japanese baseball, 175 years of Japanese baseball. And so to that end, it was really well done. If you're interested at all in that, again, and if you like the 30 for 30 kind of aspect of it all, I would highly recommend Diamond Directive as a documentary from a guy who doesn't like necessarily really care for documentaries. But anyway, it was good. And I did not stick around for the director was there. I did not stick around for the director Q&A. We were kind of prepping for our screening, and so I stepped out and met Brock, and we prepped. So the third film that I saw today, and I'd seen before, was called Human Resource. This was a film that we were lucky enough to program again at AFFD. This was actually our backup choice to our original choice, after our original choice ghosted us. But our approach to programming at AFFD was to really kind of focus on other areas of Asia that don't always get attention. So we tried to stay away from Japanese films, try to stay away from Chinese films, Korean films. That seemed like that was the majority of the films that were there. And we did a Malaysian film and a Thai film. I'm a big fan of Thai cinema. It's a lot of I mean, a lot of times it's like a slow burn, but Human Resource tells the story of a woman named Friend who finds herself pregnant, and she's trying to figure out what to do. And she also works in human resources for this company that sells defense equipment. So their main product in the film they talk about is this thin flak jacket, a vest that can stop stabbings, and can stop beatings. Um, and then it's kind of it's a nameless, faceless corporation. She's dealing with bringing in interns and like trying to convince not interns but new employees, and trying to convince new employees that they want to work in this kind of this faceless organization that won't treat them very well, won't give them very many benefits, and won't pay them very well, and trying to navigate the need for this company to bring in employees. Also kind of dealing with, I mean, like just HR things, dealing with bad bosses at this company that are treating the employees poorly. And then, of course, navigating her own piece where she has everyone else who has an opinion on her pregnancy. Uh, Not only her husband, who seems happy about the pregnancy, but also like their relationship seems volatile in spaces. And so I think it's a really it's we programmed it. Obviously, we programmed this because I think it's a different type of film than what you would normally think about coming to a kind of a mainstream festival. As much as I love the Asian Film Festival of Dallas, I don't necessarily think that the films that they show are a lot of them are, but I would say that not all of the films that they show are art house films, what we consider art house films. And just because they're foreign doesn't necessarily make them art house films. And so in this sense, I think this is a slow, really thoughtful, that meditative piece up for this woman who has to kind of navigate the world of being pregnant, and how that doesn't always seem to be all these decisions are in her control. The film does this really interesting thing that kind of like shows you all the dangers of the world, and like how everything's kind of fucked up in a way through like newsreel stories and radio over things that are going on the radio. um it's I don't know. I mean, I think Brock and I really like this film. I don't know how the reaction. We had a really great crowd. Um, the film ends on a very tense and like quick cut last shot that like really kind of gives you pause, and and then it cuts to like just a blanket of like, here's the rooms and like that we filmed in previously, and here's all of the credits, and it's just broken up in different pieces. um I think this is probably the more divisive film that we showed. I think Mackay is probably a little bit more of a crowd pleaser because it's got a funnier central character, and the comedy of errors that happens in Mackay is a little bit more accessible. Human Resources is definitely a slower film that really doesn't have. I mean, like the plot line is a woman who's trying to figure out what to do with her pregnancy. There's not some great reveal at the end. There's not some sort of great wrap up. There's not a definitive, this is going to end in a happy way. Uh, and yeah, I mean, but it's a really, really kind of beautiful. It's shot, and I think it has a really interesting cinematography and how the shots are framed. They're really, really focusing on friend. Like she stays central scene most of the time. It was a 4:3 film. Like, so it's, I mean, I would recommend for seeking it out if you could. I'm a big, like I said, I'm a big fan of Thai film, and I think their voices are very interesting. And so, Human Resource, highly recommend. And then our sojourn away from the AFFD was the new Nicholas Winding Refn film, Her Private Hell. This to this there is no real discernible plot of this film. There's a Sophie Thatcher plays this actress who's making a movie, kind of a Barbarella, Danger Diabolic kind of schlocky. It's a comic book movie, but it's like 60s sci-fi, and she is surrounded by she has this new kind of like ingenue that comes and stays with her, and I guess in her hotel, her apartment. Um, we also Havana Rose Liu is her stepmom, although they're the same age. because she's married to her father, Duke Ray Scott, who I think is the filmmaker. I can't really tell. Like there was like, but like he's somehow involved in making the film. He tells this story about a serial killer that tears people apart and has diamonds on this end of his gloves. It's we bounce around from. I mean, in very like Refn fashion, we like bounce around from set piece to set piece, neon soaked set piece to set piece. It is a gorgeous film to look at. It feels very much like, I mean, it feels very much like a Refn film, but it also feels like a Amanda Kramer film, like Please Baby Please. It has that kind of aesthetic to it. Although this feels like it's much more, it's like it has a much higher budget, which is inexplicable to me, to be honest, because I'm not 100%. Maybe Refn can like really truly do a lot with a little bit of money, but how he's able to put together these films that are just not crowd pleasers at all uh are is baffling to me. I will commend everyone in this film because they it has in such a nonsensical film. And like again, there's been nonsensical films that have been really really good. I mean, like a lot of Lynch's output. There's been a ton of movies that are ethereal and mind bending and that are gorgeous to look at, but are just surrealist. This I'm not 100% sure that this falls into that category because it feels schlocky in a way that kind of diminishes that that's surrealness of something like Jodorowsky or Benai or like the, these other like I may have pronounced that correctly. I'm tired. I'm really tired. But these other kind of like filmmakers, like something like Mulholland Drive or what's the other Lost Highway from Lynch, where you feel like you're kind of in a fever dream. That's not the case here. This isn't this like I mean, and I think Refn does this with his other like outside of Drive and since like Only God Forgives, they feel much more like genre films, like they're grindhouse Lynch, in a way. Um, and I can't say that I hated this movie. I really can't. Like I was like it's laughable. The dialogue is almost shouldn't exist. Like because it's so seemingly bad. And like the first like 30 minutes, you're like, this is just dumb. But I think over time, I warmed to it. I allowed myself to kind of just like forget that this film is not going to make any sense. And I'm not going to really care if it makes any sense at a certain point. Um, I know that there's not going to be a resolution that's great. It's under 2 hours, but it's close to 2 hours long. We go. It's really Thatcher and Lou's movie as they kind of like struggle and battle with one another. We get this like brief episode where we go to Japan, oddly enough, and we follow an American uh, GI in Japan whose daughter's been seemingly kidnapped by Leather Jack, who's this serial killer who rips people apart. And he's got to fight. He does all these fights in Japan. This where this sequence feels a lot like Only God Forgives. Um, Again, none of that really truly makes sense. And he's like saving seemingly these young girls from this like brothel. But I don't know. It really again, it's trying to explain this film as like it's I mean it's impossible. to give it a discernible plot or like a discernible thread. So all that being said, I think it's visually like striking. It's really interesting to look at when you get to the Barbarella scenes or the sequences in the movie. I mean it's obviously made to look like a cheap 60s set piece, but it's also really kind of cool to look at. And you're like, by the it kind of when it pops up on screen, you're just again you're kind of got this like what the hell is going on moment. Um, but yeah, it was I don't know. I would never recommend this to anybody, any soul whatsoever. I would never tell them to go see Her Private Hell. But that being said, I'm not like I walked into it thinking I'm gonna hate this. I know I'm gonna hate this, and I didn't. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it, and obviously I'm probably not gonna revisit it just because I don't really feel the point. But it feels like this is a movie that like you could put on at a gathering of some sort and just let it play in the background, and people would kind of occasionally look up at it and watch for a little bit, and then they would stare away and go back to something else. And that's kind of what this movie feels like to me. Um, and so yeah, I feel like this is like really weirdly torn because I turned to Barack at one point during the show and I was like, this is what Uwe Boll films would be, or if Uwe Boll had talent. Um, and it kind of feels like that. This feels like a really bad good movie. And I don't know if that makes I know that makes no sense whatsoever, but it's expertly shot. He knows what to do with his actors. Like because like on paper this film can't make any sense. So the fact that he gets any sort of discernible um performance out of them and can direct some like there's some background pieces of that where people are just like doing weird dances. Um yeah, I don't know. It's a bizarre movie. I do wonder, and I'm sitting here thinking like there have to be directors that have had like I'm thinking like Richard Kelly, who did Donnie Darko and The Box and then Southland Tales. I'm like, eh, and it has not made anything sense. You have to think that like Richard Kelly is like, how is Redfin getting money to make films when no one will give Kelly a dime to make anything? Um, and not that they're the same director, but I mean like where there's like they've made swings and misses, and yeah, it's interesting to me that he must be really good in the pitch room because I can't imagine Her Private Hell recouping its money. And this is not a film that's going to do well with like generic film goers, and it's not even like as a cult classic. It's not something that people can like. I don't think people can wrap their heads around in the sense of like, oh, we're going to come back to this and like rediscover Her Private Hell, because I don't think that rediscoveries happen for something like Only God Forgives. And really, the Neon Demon, I don't know. I feel like that film like exists, but I don't know if anybody talks about it. I don't know if anybody like likes it. I think it exists in this like weird kind of middle space of it's not bad enough to be truly despised as a awful film, but it's not good enough to be one of the films like we like Drive where people kind of come back to. And I don't know if people are or studio execs or what have you are waiting for him to make the next Drive, and they're just going to keep giving him money to in the hopes of the next Drive will just happen. But I'm not sure that that's something that really interests him because I do believe that he's made that type of film with the Pusher trilogy and of course with Drive that if he seems like he wanted to make another film like that, he would have done that. But anyway, your mileage may vary. I wouldn't like warn people to stay away from it. I think but I wouldn't recommend it either. So whatever middle of the road bullshit like review that is from me, that's as good as you're gonna get. If you're a Refn fan, like if you loved Only God Forgives or Neon Demon, I think this is going to be right up your alley. It's very similar. Um, it has enough violence and enough gore. Uh, it's it's got a really bizarre sex sequence in it um, that may turn off a lot of folks. We saw it in a theater full of all of 5 people. Now, granted, it was a Sunday night at 8:40 or 8:05, but there were 5 people in the theater, and that included Brock and myself. So, you know, like I said, if you're a fan, go see it. If you're curious, sure, and you got nothing better to do, absolutely go see it. Um, but if you're looking for a coherent plot, a coherent, even like some semblance of a narrative, I wouldn't bother. So there you go. And the last film to wrap up the festival, going back to AFFD, was a film called Any Mart, which was done, well, not done by, but it was being distributed by the same company that distributed Diary of a Ghost, which I really liked, and Gamma Land, which I liked, but I wasn't like just as gung ho as I was for Diary of a Ghost. Any Mart plays like how to qualify this, kind of like a really violent office space in a sense. We follow our main character is a assistant manager to a convenience store that is owned by his dad. And in essence, it is a satirical take, kind of horror comedy take on the banalities of workaday drudgery. And I would say kind of like Falling Down meets Shaun of the Dead, although it's not quite as horror esque as Shaun of the Dead is. Obviously, is a straight horror comedy. We follow all of our protagonists. I mean, we follow our protagonist, and he's our main thread, and he's trying to like date, but every situation is hyper realized. They make it as creepy as possible at a certain point. Like so, like a salesperson comes by his house and he's trying to tell him that he's not interested in whatever this guy's trying to sell. It's just kind of, it seems like it's real estate of some sort. And then, he appears outside of his sliding glass door in kind of his backyard, just kind of smiling creepily, and then wanders off. The manager of the store that is trying to get him to like be friends with him ends up killing himself over a slight insult. His dad, who owns the store, ends up killing the owner of the overall corporation by stuffing his face into like a vat of hot oil. And all of this seems like by the way that I'm mentioning it, it seems like it's all very, very horror-esque. But it's a very slow burn for an actual like an 89-minute movie, a little bit less than an hour and a half. So it takes a while for it to get uh like where it's going. I don't know if the film really truly like works exactly the way that it wants itself to work. It has this sense of it builds this sense of unease, but it almost does it at a snail's pace. Um, and I think the film could use more horror comedy aspects of it because what we get is this like it definitely lays out the kind of the drudgery and the kind of it plays a lot like an unfunny Clerks in that way, where we meet all these characters and these customers that we hate, or people that are tied to this convenience store, and we're like we have certain characters who are dealing with them in normal ways, and then things happen that are just completely out of left field. There's also like uh, a restaurant across the street that does well for a while and then stops doing well. And so it's hard to explain this movie, I guess. I mean, in a sense of like what it's really trying to accomplish. I mean, like what it's trying to accomplish. I know it's just basically the tagline can be just work sucks, right? And we are in this frame of taking all these to the extreme. So like when I said something like falling down, every scenario that we meet is then taken and exaggerated. So when the owner of the store takes all these things, he essentially just is now like completely disheartened, and his soul has been removed from his body by working in this convenience store for as long as he has. He follows procedures, everything's to the T. If it's not, and he can't humanize or rationalize any sort of decision. So he fires this woman who like is taking home expired food. He doesn't actually fire her. He forces her to quit because he's going to make her pay for expired food that she took home because it's against store policy. He gets upset about this one of his workers saying, "It was a pleasure to serve you," rather than "Thank you, please come again." And so and then he goes on this like kind of like a killing spree, and like he that's when he puts the owner, the franchise, the corporation, representative. He shoves his face into a frying vat and stabs the guy who's saying the incorrect phrase, the exit phrase, with a chicken skewer, and then cuts off the head of this girl and puts it on the shelf because she had made these signs without talking to him, like these signs advertising a sale without talking to him first. So, and like I said, this all happens. It happens over the course of 90 minutes, like I said before, like, but it feels kind of long and drawn out in a sense. Um, so it was fun, but I will say this, it could have been because I was exhausted from seeing that many movies over that short of a period of time. This might have sat better with me if I'd seen it earlier in the fest. In fact, I think it played late in the fest because it just had its North American debut at New York one of the nights beforehand. So I think I'd like to revisit this one again because I want to give it the benefit of the doubt with fresh eyes and not have coming out of her private hell and really truly being like invigorated to see it. I think it might have played better for me. But in this case, I didn't think it didn't play poorly, but I was kind of hoping for this to be funnier. I was hoping for it to be scarier. There are moments like when you see the creepy salesperson's face, and there's a couple of other moments like that where people are like smiling, but like there's nothing behind the smile. There's it's like a sinister smile, or a sinister reaction, like that's seemingly innocuous. There were moments like that um, that I wanted to be a little bit more in the sense of like I wanted it to be creepier. I wanted to live in those spaces, and I wanted it to be funnier too. I wanted the moments to be, and it really is just kind of like it's almost a slacker comedy in a way because our main character kind of feels like he's he feels kind of he he's he almost feels like he's a part of a stoner comedy in a sense. And so yeah, I would give it a good solid 3.5 stars. And like I said, if I get to see it again, I might upgrade that rating. So that was it. That wrapped up Asian Film Festival Dallas, man. Yeah, it was a really good time. As the Real House and Wilhelm and Forward Film Club, we want to thank Paul and the board for allowing us to guest program. It was a truly an honor to be a part of one of the premier festivals in Dallas, to be able to bring films and be a part of that. That's the first time we've been able to do that. It's the first time we've been invited. We've been invited to host films. We've been invited to sit on and do panels and things like that. But actually make selections, and to have our voices heard that way, really was truly, it was a great pleasure of ours to be able to do that. So thank you to AFFD. Congratulations on 25 years of doing this, and I can't wait for next year. Um, and so, yeah. Other than that, I'm home now. So, and that wraps up AFFD. If you're listening, we've got 2 films coming up this week on Tuesday at the Modern. We've got Widows with our Midnight Ramble Film Society and LaShonda running that the Q&A after that film. And then on Wednesday at Stage West, we will have our Fort Worth Film Club signature screening of Jodorowsky's Holy Mountain. And so I'm excited to see that with the crowd and talk about it afterwards. I'm gonna need a little rest, and then we go directly into Oak Cliff Film Festival, which again, I'm not sure how much we're going to cover this year because Oak Cliff got moved because of the World Cup, and with it being right after AFFD, I mean, just be honest with you, exhaustion is going to set in. And also, like there's a lot of documentaries at Oak Cliff Film Festival. It's just not really our thing, so we're going to try to see some narrative pieces. We will be covering some of the films on Wilhelm because we've got a few screeners and a few documentaries. We may be bringing on some filmmakers once Brock gets back from his sabbatical from just life in general. I'm sure he'll laugh at that, but he's going off in August. And so, yeah, we got a big slate coming up, a lot of things in the pipeline, and hopefully we'll have some good news and some good films and some interesting things to talk to you guys about. But until then, we hope to see you next week. Thank you for listening, and as always, keep screaming.
You have been listening to Why Does the Wilhelm Scream with your hosts, Brock and Jason. If you liked today's episode, do us a favor and rate, review, and subscribe in whatever application you use to consume podcasts these days. You can reach us by visiting whydoesthewilhelmscream.com. If you are in the DFW area, we would love to see you at a Fort Worth Film Club event. You can learn more about those and find a full schedule at fortworthfilmclub.com. And you can learn about my foundation and how we are trying to foster the next generation of film lovers at realhousefoundation.org. That's REEL housefoundation.org. Till next time,